Good afternoon. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Good evening if you're in Africa. My name is Kevin Impeccable Beck, and this is the Chicken Box. We are back for another week. We're talking about sports this week, y'all. Black people versus sports columnists. Do we even use that word anymore? Have you heard of it? Have you heard of journalism? This. If you haven't tuned in before, we have a very special guest. I'm not even hiding him today because technology has been acting up. Bill Rhoden, how are you today, sir?
Impeccable. How you doing, man? It's so great to be in the chicken box. That's
Absolutely.
yeah,
If you're
with two
from
wings.
Baltimore, Chicken BOXX is four wings and fries. If you're not from Baltimore, you probably never experienced, but you call it somewhere else. You probably have four wings and fries. We put a little sweet tea and lemonade. We make us a half and half. If you travel the world, they'll call it a Arnie Palmer if you ask for a half and half.
Right,
But
right.
that's the same thing. But this is where we come. We speak our truth, Bill, and we talk about issues. It's Black people versus sports columnists. This is our month that we celebrate sports or African Americans in sports. We're going to do a complete issue in the next few weeks. This is the first time this year that we've have dedicated complete issues to a particular topic. And so we're talking sports. We're going to talk shop today. I wanted to let's just jump into it. If you're just tuning in, this is Bill Rhoden, award-winning sports columnist. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Sometimes people can do a much better job than I can. Welcome to the Chicken Box, sir.
Thank you very much, Impeccable. Yes, I am sports columnist for right now. I work for ESPN's The Undefeated, a dynamic sports site of talks about race and culture and all of that. And I write a column called Locker Room Talk. I think I see Dr. Draper coming on. I do I write a sports column called Locker Room Talk, which I've written since 2016. I was with the New York Times for 34 years before moving to the Undefeated. And one of the best things, one of the most gratifying things I do for the Undefeated is I coordinate or run something called the Rhoden Fellows. The Rhoden Fellows. The Rhoden Fellows is a year-long fellowship for 6 students we choose from 6 HBCUs around the country. And we've just named our 5th dynamic class. And the idea behind the Rhoden Fellowship, I went to Morgan State as did,
Okay.
as
Okay.
did Mom. And when we started the fellowship, we said, there are a lot of really young, talented Black folks at a lot of HBCUs who just need the opportunity to, get in the pipeline. And so that's what we did. Each year, we choose 6 students, kind of rigorous interviewing process, and we choose 6 students to work with the Undefeated and ESPN, provide content, and they basically get a graduate experience as undergrad. So that's who I am, a little snapshot of what I do, and it's all thanks basically to the Afro-American newspaper, and thanks to
Well, let's touch on that for a second, Bill, because you said some great things. You said the world's best university, Morgan State University, which I am an alumni. So welcome to the show on that point. But you said you also played football.
Yeah.
What year did you play?
I got to Morgan in August '68, and I played in 1968. When I got there, things go sad because Morgan had not lost a game, I think, in 3 years. They had the longest, what they then called small college winning streak in the nation. So, and we played Grambling in a famous game. We played Grambling in Yankee Stadium. Grambling was the defending Black national championship. And for people watching, and again, we've all been through this thing. You mentioned these years, and it's kind of like, what?
Well, I'm just trying to get a sense of in '68. What was football like?
Well, we had helmets. We had helmets. We had helmets, and we still, we wore had like a leather ball, But I think to your question though, back in 1968, people now are used to looking at, big time college football Saturday, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and all that, and seeing these teams that are like almost predominantly black. But in 1968, those schools were not recruiting. They would not allow black athletes into their schools. They weren't worthy. They weren't worthy to go to the University of Georgia. They weren't worthy to go to Alabama. They weren't worthy, And so where they did go was where? They went to places like Grambling, Jackson State, Tennessee State, Morgan. I mean, he had these tremendous. Now it was like the Negro Leagues. And so that's when you say what football was like. I mean, football will always be football. 68, 2008, 2021, 11 people, very physical. 11 people on each side, very physical and all that. But the difference has become in 2021, football and basketball have been dominated by young African American athletes. Dominated by it, not just played, dominated.
Say it one more time. I think you wanted to say it one more time.
Yeah, dominated. D-O, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, but to answer your question, yes. Football's football, but the difference between 1968 and 2021 is that the African American presence in mainstream sports, particularly football, basketball, has been so overwhelming that a lot of young people probably cannot even remember or even conceive of a time when African Americans were not allowed into these major institutions. So, and to be honest, you could say the same thing about journalism. When you look at 1968, journalism is slightly different because we still have a lot of really talented young people working for the black press. But in 1968, man, I mean, you had, places like the Afro, the Defender, Ebony Magazine, where I went to after I left Afro, you had just phenomenal black journalists, so it was all good. It was all
absolutely good. If you just tuned in, this is the Chicken BOXX. I'm your host, Kevin Impeccable Peck, representing the Gen Xers, all my Gen Xers. Craig Talley tuning in, Michael Keith, Chippy Bass, anybody else. Dr. Draper, you're on location. I know you're shooting a show in Minnesota. I don't know if we can talk about that yet, but welcome to the Chicken BOXX. Okay. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I hope the sound is coming through a little bit better. But I am in Minnesota at the Minneapolis Spokesman Recorder, which is 86 years old. And I'm here filming a show for Hulu and Amazon Prime that's sponsored by the Deluxe Corporation. This is their 6th season of a show called Small Business Revolution. And they do small business makeovers. And this year, they're focusing on 6 African-American businesses in their home state of Minnesota. And when they do that, they ask an expert or a peer, and so I'm a peer expert, if you will, to come and walk alongside this business. So today was the great reveal. So I've been here 4 or 5 times. Baron Davis and Amanda Brinkman are Baron Davis. I know, Bill, you know him, great athlete. So Baron Davis and Amanda Brinkman are the co-hosts of that show. So I'm here at the Spokesman, where they have been blessed by the Deluxe Corporation and others for a complete makeover. They've got their building repainted, new computers, new laptops, new furniture, new carpet, new signage, and all new branding. And so it's been great working alongside with them. So check out the show. This segment will air in November. It'll air in November. So it's the 6th season. And so I've had lots of fun as a guest. It's quiet now. The whole film crew just left because part of the show, each business that's selected gives back $5,000 to some cause. And Tracy Dillard Williams, who is the publisher of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, she's giving her $5,000 to a local prison. So they're on their way there. So there's the plug for that. But on the topic of this show, and I did pull a little sports in when I talked about Baron Davis. Bill Rhoden and I go way back to his time at Morgan, and really his time at Afro. I don't know, Bill, if I knew you at Morgan. You were busy playing ball, and I was busy trying to get out. But Bill and I both are representing the Gen Xers, not the Gen Xers.
You can
sorry.
come on to our generation.
No, but that would be real strange.
What do we call us?
Yeah, the baby boomers, and I call myself a boomer millennial. But I wanted Bill Rhoden on this Chicken BOXX today. Bill Rhoden has written a book. When did you write that book? The first one, Bill, maybe what? 10,
You mentioned it's called $40 Million Slaves.
Yeah, $40 Million Slaves. I want Bill to talk a little bit about his book because go ahead, Bill.
Well, go ahead.
See, that's what friends are. See, I'm gonna get my popcorn out, guys. If you just tuned in, like, this is Black People versus Sports Columnists. We're talking to award-winning sports columnist Bill Rhoden, also Morgan grad. Are you from Baltimore, Bill? I'm sorry.
No. People think I am, but no, I'm from Chicago.
Chicago, right? Okay.
I went to. But although Baltimore is my spiritual home, that's kind of where I really grew up. But no, I was, Morgan saved me. I was in Chicago, great family, but but I'm from Chicago, just to.
All right, well, everybody from Chicago in the house, Chi-Town, we love you guys, except from October to March. We do not like to go there at all.
Chicago in the wintertime is tough, man. It's so
all right, so let's get back to that book that you were talking about.
$40
Million Slave.
Dr. Dre was talking about $40 Million Slave, which is not funny, but July 11th is the 15th anniversary of the book being published. And so far I was thinking, man, so a couple people on Twitter had been saying, this book, this 15th anniversary is, they said it was in June or something like that. But no, the 15th anniversary of $40 Million Slaves is July 11th. It hit the stands. And I was thinking, this is the first time I've actually even talked about it in an anniversary context. Because I kept thinking about how should I celebrate, the 15th anniversary? And I said, well, write another one. But I was going to write
$100 million.
Well, $40 million is still a lot because I hear that number a lot. But basically, the book was about exploring power. When I talked at the beginning, someone down the wrong way. When let me do something real quick.
It's all right. We live, y'all. If you just tuned in, Chicken BOXX, okay. You can clear your throat. See, that's the difference between live and then you're just trying to fake it and make it, and you wanna edit your life for the camera. This is live. This is the Afro. If we popped up on your thread, share. Somebody out there who may be moved by the history, who may be inspired to write and want to get in the sports journalism field. And this is a special guest, y'all.
Yeah,
he is also part of the Afro family. So, Bill, you good? You need to get you need to get some water, Bill.
We're good. I think we're good. I washed it down with caffeine, with coffee.
All right.
But I know we're kind of all over the place. But at the beginning, I was talking about how you asked the difference between football in the dark ages and now. And I talked about 1968, most of your black athletes were going to black schools, black institutions. And now most of your great black athletes are at these PWIs, these predominantly white schools. But one of the things that's not changed, and this is what $40 Million Slaves explain, the power dynamic has not really changed. Although you got all these, black folks. Oh, wow. Betty Moss's daughter was, wow, yikes. Although the numbers have changed. I love Betty Moss, by the way. Betty Moss was talking about somebody who was tough, but she was great She was really great, tough in a really great way, But the power dynamic has not changed. Even if you look at the NFL now, where you got all these brothers playing in the NFL, but you only have like 3 or 4 head black coaches, maybe 1 or 2, presidents of companies. Same thing in the NFL. Although you look at the NBA, you look at it, oh man, all these black guys, yeah, but if you look at who's coaching, you may have about 8 or 9 black coaches, maybe 2 black presidents. So the one thing that my book explained was this power dynamic, is that we basically replaced one plantation with another one, where you're still, being well paid, but you got no power, and you got power maybe individually, but collectively, you're still not part of that power structure. One owner in the NBA, Michael. Anyway, so that's what $40 million slaves explores, is your dominant force, like we are a dominant force on the plantation, but we really did not have power. So our whole thing in this country has been the quest for power, the quest to define ourselves and all that. So, and I just thought about it, the sequel. I'm thinking, what would be the sequel? Well, the sequel would simply be Volume 2, $40 million Slaves, Volume 2. Where are we now? The last person, I had a picture, I forgot what page, of LeBron James in 2006. And I think he may have only been like his 3rd year or something like that. And I use him as an example of what I call the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt is how young black athletes are on this conveyor belt. And basically the conveyor belt distributes great black athletes, these white institutions, to enrich these white institutions. You remember Chris Webber and the Fab Five, who all went to Michigan. And I interviewed Chris for the book. And I said, well, Chris, man, what you guys did was rebellion, but it wasn't a revolution. It was a rebellion. It was like a little slave rebellion. You took the 5 great black athletes, and then you went to the University of Michigan. This billion-dollar institution didn't need you. A revolution would have been going to Alcorn or going to Morgan or going to Howard. That's a revolution, So, and maybe this second book, I guess maybe you guys could help me, where I start would be, now LeBron, of course, is near the end of his career, and he's basically owns the conveyor belt, and he's sort of identified with activism and all that kind of stuff. So maybe the book was in 2021, it would kind of say part 2, converting superior numbers into power. How do you do that? So
LeBron has LeBron set the blueprint, since he owns one of the conveyor belts now, you saying?
I don't say a blueprint, an example.
An example.
He's been an example, where Michael Jordan was an example of basically being apolitical, keeping your mouth shut, and that kind of stuff. LeBron has showed a younger generation of athletes that, well, no, you can, you can open your mouth. You can do things to help pull black folks along, as we've all been pulled along. I still think the issue today is still doing things together, doing things collectively, because you still have, a lot of athletes have these foundations. And I think the other thing that's happened too was the rise of black women athletes as activists. I mean, the WNBA has been phenomenal in terms of flexing its muscle and all that. I mean, it's just too bad the NBA is not as committed to the struggle as the WNBA has been. But yeah, LeBron has set an example for other young black athletes. So yeah, I mean, particularly if you're really good, the white man isn't gonna, like, if you can make him money, he's not gonna, as long as you can make him money, he'll kind of look at what happened in the bubble last year, right? They had all Black Lives Matter and it was all slapped across the court and letting these young black guys kneel and all, because they said we just want y'all to play. So whatever it is, we're gonna put you in this damn bubble in the middle of a pandemic, and we don't give a damn what you put on signs and slogans and all that and sneakers. We just want you to. It'd be like in a plantation. Yeah, okay, we'll give you silver shovels. You can put your name on it. You can put your name on the shovels, on the picks or whatever. We just want you to plow those fields, right, Tony? We don't care what you do, right?
Yeah, just make us some money. Make sure you make us some money now.
That's
used to make it for us free. We didn't have to pay you, and we could do other things to you. And now we have to pay you, but we don't have to let you into the front office. And I want to shift a little bit for that, Bill. A lot of our listeners may not know, viewers may not know, and good afternoon to everybody. But Bill, can you say a little bit about Sam Lacey, and when you first came to the Afro? I think you and Sam may have. No, you tell your own story. I don't know how it all went, but can you say a little? Because Sam Lacey, especially as it related to Major League Baseball, I mean, this was he would still be writing the same column today that he was writing for 50 years for the Afro.
Exactly. Hey, no, you're exactly right.
But before you do it, y'all, it's generations that may not know who Sam Lacey is.
Yeah, Bill's gonna tell them.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, Sam Lacey is a Hall of Fame.
Bring us up to bring it in, Bill.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. Go ahead, Bill.
Great Sam Lacey is a Hall of Famer. He is one of only three African American writers, sports journalists in the Hall of Fame. Wendell Smith, who is Sam's a good friend and colleague. Wendell wrote for the Pittsburgh Courier. Sam wrote for the Afro, and together these two men really took sledgehammers to tear down barriers and racism in Major League Baseball, Major League Football. Wendell Smith was pictured in this movie called Jackie Robinson with the late who's the actor who went to Howard, who passed away?
Chaz Boseman.
Chaz Boseman, yeah. And check out the film if you haven't seen it. But they showed Wendell Smith. They should have showed Sam because he was just as influential. But I always, Sam was just this remarkable man. But then the story about Sam Lacey, sports writer, sports journalist, no peer. But when I got the job, when Frankie told me to report to the Afro in February of 1973, I was all, of course, very excited, right? Got the white shirt and sport coat and all that. So I'm going to impress him. I will get there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I will get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, impress him. So I got the old Afro, right? You walk up those steep steps. So I walked up those steep 3 flights of steps. And to my amazement and horror, Sam Lacey was already there. He'd been there since 5 in the morning. He'd been there since 5 in the morning, And that was my first lesson about life and journalism. That no matter how ambitious you think you are being, there's somebody who's more ambitious. No matter how early you think you getting this, there's somebody who's got early. No matter how good you think you are, somebody's better. No matter how whatever, somebody got more, somebody's better. So at some point, just say, screw it, and just do the best you can. But yeah, but Sam was, and Sam, like you talk about tough, but Sam was great. I only wrote a couple sports stories at the Afro because fortunately, and it was a blessing. I worked on I covered City Hall. I covered the Board of Investors. Liz Oliver was the city editor. That could be a whole other podcast, but that's a whole other podcast. But and you talk about tough, man. Now Liz Oliver was tough, man. Liz went to I think she went to Indiana University. I think she was one of the first Black people ever who went to Indiana University, and as such, she had a view of Black colleges that I think a lot of Black folks had about Black colleges. Didn't think we were up to snuff, didn't think we were up to speed. Every time you made an error, in a story, it wasn't because you made an error in the story, it was because you went to a black college, you know. And so my whole thing with Miss Oliver was proving myself. I mean, she really made me, really, I mean, I came every day knowing that she was going to be on my case, you know. And I mean, really, I mean, I still think of stuff that Liz said to me, not even now. And you know how old we are. And that happened in like 1973. Certain things she said still echoed and stung, but it was all this motivation to show you. And I know when I got the job to go to Ebony, you know, remember K.O. Wilson? K.O. Wilson. Anyway, let's not go to. But anyway, Sam Lacey. So Sam and I became really, really tight. When I left to go to Ebony, I think Sam was always proud of me. But I also think that, you know, when you are a guy like Sam, man, and you're at such a high level, there are a lot of young people, you know, Tony, many are called, but few are chosen, right? Many are called, but few are chosen. So to him, he'll say, well, okay, we'll see. We'll see what you become. But as I began climbing Jacob's ladder in our profession, Sam really came to respect me. You know, he really, and I could call him on the phone. And then when I went to, came back to the Baltimore Afro-American, and then I went to the New York Times, Sam and I became really close because he really respected me, and he knew he had a lot to do with it. And but what Sam would do for me, in fact, I was just looking at a letter he sent me with some material he sent me that I keep in my archives, and he just sent me something, and he said, I don't know if you could use this, but here it is. And that you talk about a blueprint, that's a blueprint to me. I said, you know, if somebody, I'm here in my office here in New York, in Harlem, and I look at, you know, the books and memorabilia, and I said, you know, if there was a young aspiring journalist who would take over my office, you know, I wonder what he or she would find valuable. Like if Sam would have let me into his office, you know, back in the day, what would I really, you know, what books would I have liked? What would I have liked to get from him? And one of the things he did throughout his life, and I spoke at his funeral, I think he was like 100 years old, right? He was 100 years old. The rumor is he wrote his last column in the hospital when he was like 100, you know. And
still playing golf.
Yeah, Sam, man. Just a marvelous role model of just he wrote his book, and his book was called, I think, Fighting for Fairness. And I'm so in his footsteps. That's, you know, my whole, I brought the black press with me in my heart everywhere I went, whether it was from the Afro to Ebony magazine to the Baltimore Sun to the New York Times. I always carry the black press with me, you know. And Sam was a large reason. Anybody who's looking at this should just Google Sam Lacey, Lacy, Sam, just to. But he just had and continues to have an enormous impact on how I go about my career, how I go about writing, and fighting for fairness, because that's what we both stood for. So yeah, the great Sam Lacey. Toast to
Sam Lacey. If you just tuned in, this is the Chicken BOXX, broadcast on the Afro-American newspaper. 129 years, everybody, of informing, educating, and empowering African Americans, not only in Baltimore, but all over the country. The internet has spread the information fast. You talked about some archives from Sam Lacey. We have some incredible archives for anything that you want to just see about history. We have it, and we thank you for your support. Go to afro.com. We have evolved, everybody. We still have a legacy edition, a newspaper, but we are black owned. We are black controlled. Nobody controls our voice. We speak our truth without a censorship, but it's only because our own continue to support us. And so you can support us by just clicking that red button on afro.com. You can get a digital subscription for less than $2 Uber Eats, $40 a year. And if you want both the print and digital, that's only $100. You pay more for some of your kids' sneakers. So we appreciate it. It's not a shame. It's a shameless plug, but it's not shameless. We're asking because if we don't support our own, as far as we're concerned, the other media will be glad that we go out of business so they can continue to tell our story their way. So welcome back. We're here with Bill Rhoden in New York. So let's pivot a little bit. So how was the newsroom at the New York Times? Were you the only African American at the time, or did you have other counterparts, Bill?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was predominantly white for all practice. I went to our first job at the Afro at the New York Times in the Week in Review, and there was like only one black person there, and I replaced him. He left, and I replaced him at the Afro. Don Wycliffe. They chased him out, and he ended up going to Chicago Tribune. Nice guy, Chicago Tribune. The Times was a very mean place, and again, I was so happy that I went to, I'm a big believer, man, in black institutions because it really grows those roots, whether it's at Morgan, at the Afro, at Ebony Magazine. So by the time I went to the White Man, by the time I went to, the Baltimore Sun, I knew who I was. In other words, I knew at that point that if they screw with me, it's them, not me. I think that's because, I think it's important for young people because I think sometimes when you go to these PWIs, there's always this sense of kind of insecurity about why. There was a big thing even recently at Disney. I'm not going to go at ESPN. I'm not going to go. They still pay my salary. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it was a big dispute. A white reporter was heard on a feed that was not turned off, saying that the reason why a young black, a really super talented young black anchor got a job, Maria Taylor, who's just a phenomenal talent. Maria Taylor is a phenomenal talent, But this person was saying, her white colleague was saying the only reason she got the job is because what? She's black. And because there was pressure on the company to hire a black person, not because she was a phenomenal talent. And I think that's what a lot of young African Americans have to go through when they go to these white institutions. Whether you go to Harvard, the reason you went to Harvard, got to Harvard because they had a quota. The reason you got to, there's always that kind of stuff. The only way at a white institution you don't get that is when you play on the football team at Alabama and all that. Then they all say, oh, well, it's clear you got that because you're the best friend. So I say that to say that by the time I got to the Times, because of Morgan, because of the Afro, because of Johnson Public Company, I knew my worth. I knew who I was. So any criticism I got or whatever, as like, is y'all, not me, So, but yeah, to answer your question, Kevin, when I got to the New York Times, man, and the Week in Review, it was like this all predominantly white male newsroom. Though the black reporters who were there, even at the Baltimore Sun, we were pretty close. We were pretty tight because you kind of have to, get that moat. But
you gotta stay tight. You gotta connect with somebody who feel that has your back and somebody who can fight together.
Yeah.
I'm loving the story. I hope everybody's still tuning in. Craig, Rachel, looks like Keith's tuning in. Patrick, man, thank you for your comments. Antonio, Q who went to Tuskegee. It is important to tell these stories because the stories is the narrative hadn't changed that much, right? Because they always, like you said, think that our position is there because there's a quota, instead of us just being the best. We're not only the best on the field, a lot of times we're the best in the newsroom as well. And so they try to put a cover over our excellence because they don't want you to outshine them.
Yeah. In a word, yeah. It's a really weird. It's a dynamic because the word narrative now is what everybody uses. We have to think of another word because everybody now is using the word narrative. But yeah, I think that has been the challenge in sports and storytelling. That's another word that's awful. Is that black folks do and white folks report, or what's the word? We do the stuff and they document, right? We do it, they document. And so at the end of the day, you say, well, who was responsible for it? White people, because we're the ones who documented it. So I think that's always been our grind, man, probably since the 1619 project, always been our grind, telling our stories. And that's why, from Frederick Douglass's, North Star to David Walker to the Afro to the it's always been our thing to tell our story. Even today, how do we filter our story through our prism, through a black prism? Even as blackness, and this is another podcast too, blackness becomes more multidimensional with more biracial parents and biracial, what is blackness in 2021? What is it? But who defines that? And who should define that? Well, we should. We should define that because we represent a very profound truth about this country. Any white person or any person coming from another country, if they want to find out what really makes the underbelly of this country, all they need to do is spend a month with any of us. Just spend a month living with us full time. No matter whether you're a rich black person, a poor black person, just spend 1 month with any black person, sit at the dinner table, tell what we really talk about, what we really got to go through. Like, even if you're like a CEO of one of these Fortune 500, the stuff you got to go through dealing with this ongoing thing, as you said, Kevin, of white folks having to be the people who control it, have to be the people who define it, have to be this God complex that we're kind of always up against, even with our liberal friends. Maybe that would be part 2 of my book. There'll be a chapter in part 2, 40 minutes, I say, contending with our so-called liberal white friends. That's become one of the that's become damn near as rough as fighting what's in front of you. Because now you got these people in back, who you kind of let into your ranks or whatever, as your lawyers, doctors, whatever, who can be just as devastating as the people in front of you.
They sometimes have a silencer on.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
they quietly just shooting you while still smiling. This is Black People versus sports columnists or journalists or reporters. And of course, we could go for years just talking about what it is to push forward just for fairness. You know what I mean? Just for fairness in the marketplace. And so we don't see it being fair because it's always a head start. And like you said, with Maria comment, there's a privileged position that's typically taken. And when the privilege doesn't match up to the position, the other person had to get a handout.
Yeah.
And so
it's welfare turned on its head. It's welfare. It's another form of welfare that you're so used to always in a jump ball. You're so used to getting the jump ball. When there's a jump ball, you get it.
Right.
And you're so used to that, right? And then when you don't, and I think that's why you had such a monster in the White House for the last 4 years, because this person's message to all white people, whether you vote for me or not, is like, listen, do you want to give up white privilege? Do you want to give up this privilege? And a lot of people, kind of gotten that voting thing, in private, like you did with assassin. You know what? Hell, I don't want to give up privilege. Why should I want to give up privilege? And I think a great dynamic there is black and white women, and that's always been a very contentious dynamic. Fighting for gender equality versus racial equality, And in the feminist movement, there's a strain of it that said, well, we'll take your black femininity, but don't bring your brother Butch, and don't bring that into the equation. Keep that out. So
so the $40 million slave, we had a chance as a people to come together with Kaepernick, right? And a lot of African American athletes or NFL players didn't all band together. Some said what they said. A lot of people didn't. Was the check affecting that decision, you think, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and again, man, I've got to be realistic. You got to be realistic. I mean, even on the plantation, it was basically when you had all these black folks, everybody didn't try to escape because you knew the consequences of it. You said, yeah, I could try to get out of here, but, man, what am I going to? So I think that in the NFL, you had a lot of people who were making money, kind of money for a few that they will never make again. It was kind of generational wealth. And you got to think long and hard when you say, am I going to give that up? Because remember, Colin was and continues to be supported by Nike. So it wasn't like he was totally not supported. He wasn't making maybe the NFL money, they blackballed him, but he was making Nike money and endorsement money, all that. But if you were going to go out there and support him, you would go, you didn't have Nike. You didn't have, you were going to be out there by yourself, and you had a lot of people supporting you. And as African Americans in this island that's the United States, if you think about it, man, we can't go back to, Nigeria or Ethiopia or to Mexico. I mean, this is it for us. This is it.
We can, but we don't want to. I think.
We don't want to. That's right. Yeah. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit, talking about journalists and sports, and you just raised about women and women athletes. Bill, what do you think about Osaka and her pulling out from the tennis and the strain on mental health for athletes as it pertains to everything we're talking about, and then the pressure from journalists who pry so much. It seems like they pry so much into the affairs, especially of African American female athletes. What's your thought on that?
I really feel for Naomi Osaka, and I'm proud of it, actually. I've been in thousands of those post-game press conferences and all that, and I'm like thinking I probably wouldn't want to take it either. If I didn't have to be in front and hear stupid, and good for Naomi. She said, you know what? I don't have to do this, and I'm not going to do it, and good for her. And I think there are a couple other athletes, even Giannis Antetokounmpo, he didn't make himself available. He said, man, I don't want to listen to this kind of stuff. And I think that we in the media really have, and we don't do this, Tony, we don't soul search. We just attack, but we really have to. So that's why, Kevin, when you're talking about columnists versus, I think that's why athletes began this thing called the Player Tribune. In other words, they want to take out the middle man and woman, which is the media, and tell their own stories, because the press is still predominantly white, still predominantly male, and there's this dynamic. Particularly when you have this largely white media infrastructure telling the story of black people, people of color. It's a story that you're still filtering through your own prism. So yeah, Tony. I mean, I really respected Naomi Osaka, and even with and of course I can't remember the sister's name, who's not going to be able to be in the Olympics because
Richardson.
Yeah,
Richardson.
Say her name again.
Richardson.
Yeah, just a tragic thing. Now, I mean, the rules are the rules, so that's just the way it is. The rules are the rules. But I think that it was I believe it was a white reporter who told her, like that her mother had died. I think, and I got to look at the context. I don't know if it was just like, a one-on-one thing. Like if I just pull you to the side and say, listen, because how are you going to break that news in a group? And that's what we do as media, because at the very end of the day, in the dark research of everything, it's about a scoop, or it's about seeing your reaction. when I break this news to you, you know, and it kind of really, you know, said she had to go. It threw her for a loop, you know. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, I just think that with Osaka and even with Venus and Serena Williams, I think had they, in retrospect, they probably would have pulled out too. And in terms of mental health, I know we're using that term a lot, and I've been thinking about it a lot too. We use her mental health, and I'm just thinking, hell, man, life is mental health. I mean, you know what I mean? Just life is mental health. You know, you wake up, from the time you wake up in the morning and get through the day, you know, it's like mental health. You know, it's like hour to hour. You know. So you know, so I can imagine if you're like a tennis player or that. I remember one of the first stories I did a story. It was Afro, maybe Ebony, but I spoke to a lot of athletes about religion, and it was about, you know, guy. I remember Elvin Hayes, is rest his soul. I think he said that, you know, you're in this limelight, and hundreds, thousands of people cheering for you, and then you go into this lonely hotel room, you know, and if you're not, you know, if you're not spiritually rooted, or, you know, if you're not really rooted, all this stuff that you've accomplished could be like sand through your fingers. It's not rooted in anything. So it's always these, you know, the crowds and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you go to your lonely room, and it's like empty. You know, there's nothing there. And I think that particularly a lot of celebrities, athletes, a lot of people,
entertainers, athletes are entertainers.
Absolutely. And a lot of them don't think. See, a lot of them don't think that.
Well, that's what they are.
They don't really realize it, man.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's when fame comes into it, because a person is famous based on what other people are saying about you.
Yeah.
That is what fame is. And then when you get in your room, like you said, Bill, if you don't have a determination of who you are, because you'll let Twitter, you'll let Instagram, you'll let the Post, you'll let the press, the columnists say whatever. And when they speak that into your life, if you have no center at all, you internalize all of these things, which takes your mental health to a different state, only because you haven't created your own identity of who you say you are, or who, if you believe in God, God says you are. So you have nothing to stand on. So you get whipped, then your mind gets, and then you turn to a substance or two, and that begins to try to fill that void of actually who you are. Now, we got a few minutes left. This is the Chicken BOXX show. We're speaking our truth.
By the way, do I get a chicken box for this?
I mean, you know what? You will. When the pandemic is over, we're gonna.
Don't use that excuse now. See, everything is not a pandemic.
The show was supposed to be live, Bill.
We'll get you the fries when the pandemic is over. Come on, man.
Bill, look. It was supposed to be live. We were supposed to have people bring in their best fried chicken or their best grilled chicken, and we were going to have conversations around eating chicken, because even if you're angry, when you eat some chicken, you can at least smile for a little while. You know what I mean?
Fortunately, I got an air fryer. So the air fryer makes perfect fried chicken and French fries all the time. So as soon as we finish this, in fact, I've been thinking about it all the last hours. I mean, I gotta give me some wings. I gotta give me some wings and some fries, man.
Absolutely. So my last thing before I get off the box was, when we do something as African American athletes, whatever it could be, it is magnified to the 10th power and always reiterated. In, like, when they're talking about it, even Ray Lewis, he didn't murder anybody in Atlanta, but they always, when they talk about his greatness, they'll throw something negative always into it. When Brett Favre's taking pictures of his private areas, sending them, Ben Roethlisberger is, you know, trying to take stuff from women at the bar, that never gets mentioned in the conversation when they bring them up. But African American athletes, it seems like the other media constantly wants to remind us of something negative. Bill.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things, this gets back to Sam Lacey, because I remember Sam told me, you know, one of the many things Sam did is that he fought or when the baseball teams went down south, and the black players had to, they couldn't stay at the hotels with the white players, and so Sam wanted to break down those walls. But of course, a lot of black players they're saying, "Listen, man, I gotta tell you, when we go to the black neighborhood, to stay, we have a lot of fun because so." And Sam said, "Yeah, I get that, and you all stay here. But the bigger picture is that we got to fight for fairness." And I think that my point to what you were saying about these double standards is, yes, there are all these double standards, but I think it's part of particularly brothers and sisters who are in the media to keep us all honest, just between me and you. Yeah, all right, but you gotta be right. You gotta be right.
Right.
You can't. Remember, that's a lot of things, man. Again, a lot of these young kids, man, are kids who go to these elite PWIs, and they think they do anything that they're white kids and get away with it, and you can't. Hey, Tony, before we leave, and you'll appreciate this, Tony. So I'm gonna turn my camera around. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the albums over here?
I see them. Yeah, I can.
So this is my album collection, and Tony, of course, painfully reminds me how I had a card catalog for all my albums. It would be a source of pride that every time I buy a new album, and I still buy albums, I would. So Tony reminded me, that I had this file, and then I'm thinking when you brought it, I said, "Damn, where is it?" And it's really been a source of misery. I'm thinking, what did I do? What did I do with my card catalog? So anyway, that is totally, had nothing to do with this conversation, but it does do with kind of chronicling history.
We have a quick question from Craig Talley, also a Morgan grad, who said, "Who is the most influential athlete of all time to you? Who do you believe, Bill?"
That's good. I'd probably, just quick answer. I'd probably say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the reason I do say Craig, and we could have a lot of other discussions, but history is really irrelevant to young people. So my first thing is, which athlete in the past still holds records in the future today? Right? And Kareem is still the all-time leading scorer in the history of the NBA. The all-time leading scorer. Plus, he's got 11 books. He's done 5 or 6 documentaries. He's really done.
And he fought Bruce Lee too. Remember that?
Oh man, see, there you go. Yeah, I forgot. But and he fought Bruce Lee. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, final words. I don't know if we lost Dr. Draper.
Oh, no, I'm here. My battery is low, so let me jump on the box really, really quickly, okay? Because I want to take a page out of Lori Lightfoot's book. I want to say to African American athletes, whether they are rec league, pro, wherever they are, stop catering to the white press. You're expecting something that you're not going to get, and so yes, we have to do a better job on our end. But there are more athletes than there are black newspapers. And so what happens sometimes is they'll come to us after there's been a wrong. But I just want to advocate for the black press being a trusted voice, a true partner, just going forward with our athletes. Now, as I said, some of this is what we have to do to make sure that they know where to go and how to interact with us. But I'm just hoping that some of those doors will be open so that we can hear and tell the true stories now, today, as we did in the past. And the last thing I want to say is thank you, William C. Rhoden. Thank you, Bill Rhoden, for just saying yes to this interview today, or this conversation. It wasn't an interview at all. It's a conversation. So thank you for that. And I want to give a plug. Towards the end of the month, the Afro is going to dedicate an entire edition. Every month we've been dedicating entire editions to one subject. Our one subject for the month of July, it's sports. That's one subject, and so look out for an article by Bill Rhoden. I think he's going to talk more about his Sam Lacey days and some other things that he and the editor are working out. And so, Bill, thank you so much. And I'll give a shout out to your young assistant, Palmer. He did good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, we would be remiss if we didn't see the blueprint changing with Deion Sanders going to Jackson State along with Eddie
Yes.
Georgia, and
Yes.
the stance that he's taken to move the sports in a different direction and back into the right direction, I should say.
Yeah, we'll see. I just wish they would have gone. Yes, I think that's all great. I wish Eddie and Deion could have gone there out of high school instead. But
well, you know, maybe the future Eddies and Deons will come right out of high school because of the impact that they make. But the step created news that went around the world and put Jackson State, where famous Walter Payton went, and others, you know, maybe on the map for the first time in other media. But of course, in the Black media, we definitely know who Jackson State is. But again, Bill, thank you. Final words. I'm going to give you the final words. Whatever you want to say, whatever's on your heart, as we close this show out.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank Dr. Draper for always being supportive. I always appreciate it. And your mom and the Afro is always a near and dear to my heart because it was at the beginning. So just a heartfelt thanks, and I'm happy to be able to, have with this Rhoden Fellowship with these, getting kids from the HBCUs and giving them an opportunity to bring them in the pipeline. It's all an extension of everything the Afro represents, the Black press represents, and Black institutions represent. So thank you.
That was a conversation, guys. Thank you, Rachel, Chippy, Jewel, Craig, Keith, Lenore, anybody else. If I'm missing your name, don't blame it on the heart. I just can't blame it on the eyes. I can't read everybody's name, but we thank you for supporting the Chicken Box. And go to afro.com and subscribe so that we can continue to bring you information that empowers and informs. Until next week, have a blessed day, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, good afternoon, or good morning.